Right, so part 4. I'm going to skip along a bit. We discussed distance last time, and we're going to move on to the wind now. You know, the wind, it's a huge factor in airsoft, never mind long range shooting. It's just even more compounded in that, but let's discuss it. So reading from this book I published the other year, Wind. Long range shooting is about your ability to master reading the wind and quantify or visualise its effects on a pellet's trajectory. Once you switch onto it, you soon realise air currents are always present, even if only minor. The very first thing to do is look for obvious visual aids that indicate the wind's direction. Flags, smoke and foliage will move with the wind's direction of travel. The more they lean and move around, the stronger the wind. Next, so let's have a look here. I don't know if you can see, there's just very minimal amount of the foliage is just bobbing. Wind's coming this way from behind the sun basically, so it's a crossing headwind. It's coming towards me and it's moving to the side, so we've looked for visual aids there. Flags, smoke and foliage will move in the wind's direction of travel. The more they lean and move around, the stronger the wind. Next, you may realise that the wind is moving differently at different parts of the firing range, perhaps less by the shooter, which is behind large fir trees, which I am today, although I'm not behind them, and more in the centre, where a fire break channels wind currents across the firing range. Well, there's a big open field here, so I'd suggest that's where the strongest wind currents probably are. And the way it's coming down in that dip, there's maybe more shelter just before the target. Sometimes you may notice the wind is even travelling in different directions by the shooter and by the target. Remember, areas with shelter will have less wind velocity. Urban areas and cuttings in forest can channel winds and give you very localised directions and velocities. Stream and river beds, which there is down there behind the target. Stream and river beds also funnel wind currents and can be different direction to overall gusts. So although the wind's moving, say, up here, there might be a separate channel of air going down that stream. Yeah, it could be going totally the opposite direction, and it's obviously quite noticeable when you're in that dip below the ground, the cold air. Urban areas and cuttings in forestry can channel winds and give localised directions and velocities. Imagine wind is like water and there are areas of main flow along a riverbed, while some areas create natural eddies and calm water. Wind has a large effect on airsoft pellets as soon as they are exposed to them. Right? So I've now got a little guide on what that means. So calm wind is no miles an hour, so it might be like half a mile an hour, quarter of a mile an hour, 0.1 of a mile an hour. Might be nothing. 0 feet per second, nothing moves, smoke rises vertically. Calm, 1 to 3 miles an hour, 4 feet per second. Nothing moves, smoke drifts slowly. So you can see we're a bit beyond that. There is stuff just bobbing around out there. So slight breeze, 4 to 7 mile an hour, which is 10 feet per second. Felt on face, well, I can feel it on my face. Leaves rustle, flags move. Well, it's at the lower end of that scale, so I'd say it's around 4 miles an hour. So I know at that distance, 145 yards, it's going to be a 4-second shot. So if the wind was constant as it is here, all the way down there, there'd maybe be as much as 40 feet of wind passing at that stage. But remember, it's not a full factor wind, not 4 mile an hour in that direction, it's in this direction. So maybe aiming, I'd say about 3 yards to the left of the target is what I'd be educating my own experience and estimated guesswork. that's the kind of windage correction I'd put in for my first shot. 3 yards left, which I'd have to look at how many mil dots that is through a scope, but not many. Might be like 1.5 or something like that at that distance with only 1.5 magnification. So the winds go up and increase, and gives you guides on that. Right, you need to be able to observe for clues all down the range as to wind speed and velocity variation along with directions, remembering high angle shots will not get the same level of shelter present at ground level. So yeah, there could be like shrubs and smaller trees, but once you're firing at high angle up there, they're going to get the full effects of the wind, maybe more than you're feeling at ground level here. So, you know, any kind of indications, you know, if you can see insects flying, birds, how they're doing in the wind, you know, anything can give you some kind of idea. You just got to observe. Remember, as the pellet gets further away and slows down, the wind will alter its course more, as it simply has been influenced by it longer. So this is it, the last 20 yards of the flight, the pellet's going to be going much slower than the first 20 yards of its flight. So even if it had the same wind effect, the wind will affect it more in that last 20 yards. So consider that the wind at the far end is quite important, and nearer the shooter less so. More important as you're getting down the range, and more as it has more influence. And you consider that, like say, the wind could be swirling around this field below the tree line, so it might get wind this way near us and swirling round and crossing at the target. So you see your pellet maybe move off with an influence of going to the right, but at the other end could end up being left of the target. So it can be, there's a lot going on, you know, a lot to consider when it comes to wind. From all this observation, you need to be able to refer to previous experience, such as data cards in this logbook, to offer an educated solution. So yeah, I'm just going off my own mental framework of what I'd be expecting. Right, a little bit more. Yeah, let's discuss this. So I've got this back out again today. You can see now it's 4 degrees, so it's a degree warmer than it was yesterday. It's dropped down to 767, so 1 millimetre of mercury less, so that's better. Both of those factors are giving better conditions, and we're talking 70%, 72% humidity. So all in all, probably a better day than yesterday and a better day than the day before as well. So slowly getting to better conditions. If it was warmer, I mean, it's late in the day now and it is cold, that would have made a difference too. Right, before firing, that is more than just a wild guess. The further shot, the more the wind will alter trajectory and ultimately point of impact. Remember, number one, the pellet is exposed to the wind far longer as the pellet moves further away. Number two, the pellet has less energy at longer ranges due to decay and drag, so the wind will be able to influence it more. So the wind down that end is going to be doing far more to your point of impact than the wind at this end, and that's something you really need to be trying to do, is like look down there. You know, I can see long blades of grass in that field, they're just not moving. It's a very tranquil day. I'd say the wind's dropped a little bit, so I'd move my point of aim to something like maybe even as little as half a mil dot to the left. Remember, your pellets are going to be going to the right anyway, as we discussed with Coriolis and Ethos effect at this. You know, shooting westerly, so it's going to drop a few inches and it's going to move to the right a few inches. So I'd put in, say, half a mil dot. There's so little wind now, that's probably what I'd go with. So your corrections changing all the time, and you're just concentrating and assessing that. Okay, so So the same wind may only require 1 yard of compensation at 40 yards, but 6 yards of compensation at 120 yards. So this is a stronger wind. You're going to just have to put a bit of correction up close, but out there, yeah, it's going to have a huge effect, especially that second half. To achieve the maximum range, it's important to note that you do not cant to fight the wind. Right, okay, so if you're an experienced airsoft sniper or player, you'll know that if you have your gun dead level and it's windy, your pellets will just move off. So what people do is, as they become more experienced, they learn to cant the gun slightly into the wind, so that the spin isn't just lifting the pellet, it's fighting the wind. And that way, although it's windy, you can get your pellets to go incredibly straight, and it's a very good technique. However, for this style of shooting, you can't do that. Now, the reason you can't do that is you're adding another huge factor into the accuracy of the pellet at distance, and there's no way of quantifying it. So this is all about getting everything dead level. And the other reason for that is any of the spin that you use to fight the wind, rather than give you lift and distance, is reducing the lift and distance. So you will not get the same distance. Once you start tilting the gun, it will cant the wind, but your range will drop off. Now, shooting maximum range and consistent shooting, it's all about dead level shooting. So don't be tempted to cant the gun at this type of scientific style of shooting. If you're firing Kentucky windage, do whatever you want, because you're going to be guessing where to aim, and if you're going to angle the gun and have a go as well, it's adding a factor that, to be honest, you're already stabbing in the dark. So therefore, to counter the wind, all you can do is actually adjust the point of aim to the side of the target, and sometimes vertically too. That's to do with if it's a headwind or not. But basically what it's saying there is instead of just going, I'd normally just add a bit of spin, you'd aim off. Go back to how it should be, and that's how you can repeat shots. Remember, a headwind will cause some more drag, however it also means the hop effect is boosted due to the medium the pellet is spinning through is travelling by faster. So as the pellet spins and the air's going by, because the air's going by quicker, it creates more spin, therefore more lift. So a headwind it's creating more drag on the pellet, so it's slowing it down more, but it's also increasing the spin. That's an important thing to learn. Therefore, slight headwind can be very beneficial to your trajectory without massive loss of range. So just like today, this very light wind coming across to the right, it's beneficial if anything. It's just giving me that little bit more, at the end it'll be adding a little bit more lift. In the opposite way, a wind behind the shooter will help push the pellet along. However, it will produce less lift from the hop effect and start to fall sooner. So although the pellet's spinning, going this way, the wind's going behind it, it just creates less lift. So your pellet will start to drop sooner. But there'll be less drag because it's not going against a conflicting medium. It's going with the flow a little bit more. In the opposite way, wind behind the shooter will help push the pellet along. However, it will produce less lift from the hop effect and start to fall sooner. These two facts are contrary to common thoughts on the subject of wind in airsoft. Whatever you believe, we all know the pellets seem to consistently go similar places, but sometimes well away from the intended target. So yeah, you shoot and it goes way off to the right, and you shoot again and it goes exactly the same place. That shows that it isn't the gun, it isn't the ammo, it's just your point of aim is way off. Do you get me? It shows if it's repeatable and they're all going to the same place, you just need to be changing, either things aren't level, or the wind's got more effect than you think, or you're just not zeroed properly, or you're just shooting in the wrong place, which is generally, this is all about it, learning to guess where to actually aim way off from the target. So where are we? This shows the gun's path is repeatable and therefore is predictable. This book is an effort to get you to realise the platform's potential to shoot so much further than you currently do by building up a log of aim points and impacts along with environmental data so as to be able to refer to it in the future for your own personal platform and setup. So this is it. It's about not just going, oh, I think I remember when I've done this before. It's like, no, you'll know. You'll be able to study this and you'll know. Reading the wind accurately is a very hard skill to learn and requires investing time in observation, and owning a wind meter helps too. Called an anemometer, these are cheap on eBay but can only confirm the wind speed where you are, not downrange. Right, anemometer, I've got a couple. Basically today, this wind's so, I can just feel it on my face, it wouldn't actually register on one of those meters. They're more for say 10 mile an hour plus winds. So you know, there's no real scientific way of measuring the full wind effect down there without buying an amazing quality scope or something like that with a computer in. Right, so reading the wind accurately is a very hard skill to learn. A full crosswind at 90 degrees would get a certain amount of correction to compensate. A wind at 45 degrees still needs 70% of that compensation, and even if only a few 20 degrees off the line of trajectory still requires 50% compensation. So there, that's basically highlighted that the wind coming across this way, according to that, I don't need half the correction. Even though it's 45 degrees, I need 70% of the correction. So if I was going to be adding a mil dot on, I'd still need to put 0.7 of a mil dot on. So that's an important thing to learn. Right, what we're going to do is we'll leave it there, and we'll have a look at part 5 next time. Thanks for joining me, the few people interested in this, and hopefully we can maybe organise some kind of event in the year. See ya.